The Dental Download podcast is your source for insight into dental school, conversations with dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Haley Schultz. Let's get into this week's episode. All right. Hi, everyone. We have another guest here today, and I'm going to let Dr. Pearce introduce himself. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Thanks, Haley, for all the effort that you put into making these programs possible. And it's an honor to be a guest with you here today. So my course, general dentist all the way through. Always have enjoyed being a student at all phases of learning, as well as just the process of learning, I guess. And so that led my general practice to become more of a surgical reconstructive practice. A typical day, we would be doing full arch either surgery or sedation or dentistry, prosthetic ends of things, removable and fixed on teeth or on implants, and with a very small team, kind of really focused on that. And that's not right or wrong. That's just sort of where my journey took me, if you will. So after 38 years of doing that kind of dentistry in a couple of different states, we sold that business in 2021 and then relocated to our residences in Florida and Montana. And then I've been involved in I wouldn't say actually coaching dentists, but in mastermind groups with some other dentists where we'd get together quarterly and spend a couple of days together with a facilitator in an organized manner to say, good, here's what's going well, and here's my questions and concerns, and how can you as a group of 15 to 25 dentists kind of weigh in and help me figure those things out. And then every quarter we come back and how did that work? What else can we do? So we all kind of shared our issues and our concerns and how we wanted to get better, and then help each other with information and thoughts from our backgrounds, if you will. And I really enjoyed that process, one. And two, some folks in that group were very kind to say, David, you seem to have a knack of taking these complex issues and boiling them down into maybe more simple, easy, actionable steps that we can take home and do on Monday. And so there's some appreciation for that. So I thought, well, good. I've had levels of success with my own business on the business end, on the clinical end, yes, and then also on the business end. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that here today. But also the idea of actually taking that information and helping other people with it in that group, I kind of felt like, well, that seemed to be successful. So now my next journey in life is just to do that on a very intentional way of helping a select few, if you will, dentists who want to really accelerate their business in a faster way to get to a place which might take them longer to go without somebody who's actually done it and has figured a lot of that stuff out. And I want to help them create their journey, not mine, but at the same point in time get there much faster, much quicker, and get through the obstacles and go around them. So that's my very long elevator speech.
And I'm sure over all that time, while you were learning from others and learning from your own mistakes, is there anything that sticks out that you're really glad you did early on, or anything you really wish you had not have done so early on?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because you'd hope you learn from your past, right? And so I think that probably the biggest thing that as I look back on it was that I made an assumption and a commitment to that assumption that if I gained clinical mastery, that my business would also become very successful. And I say very successful primarily from the standpoint of patients saying, we want you, David Pearce, to do our dentistry, whatever that looks like, a little or a lot. And then that ultimately that equates into them writing a check, and ultimately that can equate into the business becoming profitable, and that money can go back into the business and back into my lifestyle and back into the team and all that kind of stuff. But that was a wrong assumption. After a couple of decades of getting fellowships and different types of programs and all that kind of stuff, it didn't equate to business success. It just equated to frustration of, I have a lot of skills, but people aren't saying yes, and in that whole process. So I think that idea that clinical mastery is one of the pieces of the puzzle of success, and it really kind of needs to be there, I think. But I say I think because I feel like if it's good for the dentist, young dentists, to kind of look at it and say, if I'm just a general dentist to all people, that's a big field to compete in any industry. You can do it and you'll be okay, but it's a tougher road as opposed to if you look and say, how can I become more of a niche type business and something that I, as a dentist, really have passion for? You got to figure that out. So that's the clinical side. But then on the business side, to look at that and say, but how do I, just because I got these skills, does that mean that people are just going to come running to me and say, ooh, I want you? And I'm here to suggest that that as much work has to go into that portion, and eventually more work has to go into that portion as your clinical skills become easier. More work has to be really focused on how do I develop a team, and how do I develop a whole process of helping patients to basically just say yes to the dentistry, yes to you, and yes to now, not kick the can down the road. So yeah, be that. Don't focus on clinical, but don't mislead yourself to say, once I go one more CE and I have one more skill, that's going to be the ticket. It's like part of the ticket, not the.
Yeah, there's other components, especially depending on what you're thinking is success, if you're looking at like your practice being successful specifically.
Sure.
So you talked about those mastermind groups. Did you yourself ever have an individual coach or consultant that you worked with individually, or was it mostly through those mastermind groups?
I would say, and even the mastermind groups came later in my career. So prior to that, I had people who said I had one person in particular, one group in particular, who said that we will coach you. And I think that was fair. However, the people I was working with were never dentists, and no intention of being dentists. So they were coaching me on business theories, which were good and they're applicable across the board. But on some of the day-to-day stuff, they didn't have, I don't know, for me, it was like much easier to talk to people who have walked the walk and they kind of understand the ins and outs of the actual industry of dentistry that we're in. One, and then two, those people weren't there. Like, it wasn't ever like, okay, I'm here to hold your feet to the fire, David, and I'm here for more than a month or 2 months or one weekend course, or every 3 or 4 months we get together and we study together for 2 or 3 days. So the idea of a true coach, like an athletic coach, like, and I had really good athletic coaches. They're like, every day they're like, no, you can be better, David. I'm going to make you better because you want to get better. I'm going to make you a better version of yourself. And they held you accountable to that in a very loving yet firm, good way. So that, to me, I didn't have. But if somebody certainly coming out of school could have that, and I guess I'd throw this in, like, I think I've met a lot of dentists who have, really fortunate, who have family members who are in dentistry. And that's an awesome opportunity for coaching. We have that there. And I would never take that away from anybody in any way, shape, or form. It's awesome. And then also, too, is to look at that and just make sure that what they're doing is what you want to do. Like, what level of success are they having in their mind? And is that, as you perfectly said, like what does success look like? Because it can be different. It should be different things for different people. And just make sure that their success is what you're looking for. Because if they're going to be your guide, then they're going to take you up the mountain that they're used to hiking on, and that may not be the one you want to be on. So, yeah.
Did you find most of the mentors and colleagues that you worked closely with throughout your career through like organized dentistry, through going to CE, through study clubs? Like, how did you connect with those people?
Yeah, I would, no question, it came through CE, and I just probably should have listened to them sooner, or asked better questions. So the folks that were on my CE journey, if I'd asked them, so like asked them, so like, who have you seen on the non-clinical side that's giving you help? Who are those people? And I wasn't smart enough to ask that question of people. And then two, I think that, and I think, money is sort of a funny thing for folks. From the standpoint of, so like, is your practice successful? Oh yeah. So can we put some numbers like to that? Like, and are they real numbers? And I say numbers, the numbers can be like, so how many days a year do you work? Well, I have young kids and I want to spend a lot of time with my kids. And I know dentists that are quite successful, and they work the equivalent of 3 months a year. They spread it out. And other people might say, like, you can't possibly do that and be successful. And they're like, yeah, I can, because I can afford all my bills and I'm with my kids all the time. And that's my success. Perfect. And then there's other folks that are in a different position or whatever, and they look at it and say, like, no, that's not, I want more revenue or more, whatever that might happen to be. So I think that, yeah, I definitely met them through courses, and I should ask more about the business side of those people and then try to find folks that I could be transparent with about my numbers and my goals, and that they would respect those because they're mine, not theirs. And then find folks that are on that similar type of a journey. Like, yeah, sure, like, whatever that is, we'll help you figure it out. Yeah.
And then I'm not sure if any of the dentists that you work with directly are kind of the new grad area, or if they're more experienced in their practice. But in terms of financial planning and trying to have your career support your financial goals, what would be kind of your initial advice for new grads? Because I feel like a lot of people feel really burdened by their debt, but they have all these clinical aspirations and business aspirations. What would you say?
Well, I mean, you could talk about that a long time, right? And really, these are individual conversation. So, yeah, for instance, like one of my clients, is like 3 years out of school, did a residency, a couple years associates, physicians, and then wanted to have her own practice, and ended up starting a scratch practice, and is doing, very well, on track for 800 to 1.0 first year. And so is that possible? Yes. So, but to your question, I think the biggest advice there, and in fact, this isn't about me or anything else, but like I found I enjoyed writing. So I wrote 2 books earlier this year. And the second book is what exactly, I think, goes to your question, which is there's good debt and bad debt. In your school debt, it's too bad you have it, but it's a great investment in yourself. Like dentistry is an awesome profession. I can't imagine any profession, and we won't have time on the show to talk about it. I can't think of any profession that's better for anybody. And I'll be sexist because I think our society puts lots of pressure on women like you, which is where you have to be an amazing, breadwinner. You have to be an amazing mom. You have to be amazing. All these things that it's expected that the woman's going to be able to do, have to do, for no good reason. It's just our society pressure. So for instance, for this young woman, client, she has 2 kids. They're under the age of 5, 4, and she's the breadwinner, stay-at-home dad. She's fortunate for that. And so I looked at it and said, you can work, 2.5, 3 days a week, and you can be at the top of your game and do awesome stuff and spend the rest of the time with your kids and your family if you want to. And you can't do that as a CPA. Come March or April, not going to happen. As an attorney, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to go to court this week. Like, yeah, you are, because you just can't do it. As a physician, too bad, you can't do it. I think dentistry is just amazing. It's just awesome that way, to help us out. But the good debt, bad debt is you're like, screw the good debt. If you're going to invest in a practice, that's really good debt. Be really careful about that. Make sure the practice is definitely powerful enough to support that. But make sure you avoid the pressure that society puts, the pressure on women. The pressure is on young professionals that, well, you deserve the nice car. You deserve to live in this neighborhood. You deserve those clothes. You deserve these trips. You deserve the big rock. You deserve. And it's bad enough if you don't have that yourself. Society will kind of put that on you. Like, how come you're driving that thing? Well, why are you living over there? You're renting? Like, why are you renting it? Not owning your own house. I mean, all that stuff so I would just encourage any new grad, like you've been used to living in like poverty, my word. Like, as a student, unless you're one of those privileged few, you've been used to living with not much. Well, it's okay to be like that for a little while longer. I mean, gradually increase your lifestyle, but pour the money and the profit into the things that are going to create wealth for you, create that financial freedom, if you will, or just that lesser burden. You see your debt going down, as versus, well, I'm just going to own a Beamer or something or other just for a few years, just so it feels good. Like the math on how much money you lose when you do that is just, it's just killing. It's a killer. So I think the first thing I would just say is, like, if you decide I want to own my business like this, go for it. Maybe work with somebody who has had enough knowledge to look at it and say, for this particular gal, she was looking to say, like, I got a lease space. It's all great. It's wonderful. And she was going to put in 5 or 6 rooms and all this kind of stuff. And we just kind of looked at it and said, that's awesome, but it might be too soon for that. You might find such a financial, like, just staring at you that it might be hard to feel good about life for a while. And that might be too much pressure. And so we found a much smaller lease space. Perfect for us. It was working out great. The other space might work better for somebody else, different personalities. But other than that, just look at that. Just avoid that I call it fancy, like the fancy stuff. I just want fancy this, fancy that, fancy this, fancy that. Just avoid that for a little. Just put that off. Don't compare yourself to your friends that got out of school 4 or 5 years before you did. They don't have your dentistry debt. They're in a totally different place. Don't compare yourself to any of those people. Just run your own course. You're used to being, my word, poor. Like you're doing fine. You're eating fine. If you're eating mac and cheese and whatever you're having, ramen noodles, well, good. That's okay for a little while longer. You're okay. Like keep doing that. Sorry to be so long-winded on that, but that's the thing I just see sink. It just sinks so many people, not just dentists, so many people in our society.
Yeah, I
It's
know it's
so,
tempting because you see
oh,
this big
yeah,
paycheck come in that you've never had, and you're like, oh, maybe I can get that thing I always wanted. But like you said, just hold off a little bit longer. Like that money you save month to month without the big car payment can be huge later.
you're so right. That's exactly right.
It's advice to myself, honestly.
Yeah, no, well, it's tempting,
Yeah,
and especially
exactly.
with society putting that pressure on you. I mean, it's there. There's no question. Society, your colleagues, all the people you went to college with, all your buddies, even some of your dental buddies. You can look and say, well, how come she can do that? Say, well, if you could pan forward 20, 30 years and look at the things that she or he maybe can't do in their life, but you can because you didn't follow their footsteps. You don't have that ability to look forward and see where they're going to be. But the math doesn't lie. You start doing the math and it's like, holy cow, you can create a house of cards really easily. It doesn't take much for it to fall down, and it takes so much to keep it up.
And obviously, a lot of people, like I said, coming out of school, coming from basically no money in the bank, pretty much. And classic advice is okay, savings, build up emergency fund first. But after that, what do you recommend people are doing for saving for retirement? Or I guess, and would you say, how can they know when they're maybe ready to start putting in a few of those more like extra expenses into life, like buying a house or getting the nicer car? Like, what thresholds should they be looking for of saving versus spending?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Well, so I would just say purely from an invest. So if you're talking about like saving money to me is investing. So like we're going to invest it. So that doesn't necessarily mean stock market or things like that. Investing just means really you're not spending. Right? It's something something that's going to grow in value. So for sure, the biggest, best investment that any dentist, dental student, anybody thinking about dental school, best investment, go to dental school. Anybody in dental school, it's like great, graduate, and then make somehow get into a place, either associateship or buy a place or whatever that looks like, where you can start earning revenue because that investment of education is now paying you off. And then from there, investments in, again, the very best investment initially for me is in you. Like if you come out like I did, and I thought, wow, I know a lot. And then I was fortunate to work in the same building, not with, but in the same building with three other general dentists who basically had done the same path that I was going to do, but were way ahead of me. They're 15 years older. And I saw it and I was like, why do you do that? How can you do that? Like a quadrant at a time, an arch at a time. Like all that stuff. I thought, I know everything about dentistry coming out of dental school and a GPR. And then I was like, no, you know some, but you don't. And the more, of course, the more questions I had, the more unanswered questions I had in front of me. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know much at all. So keep pursuing, look at things strategically and say, so if I can, if I'm doing this, what can I add to my arsenal on the clinical side? Again, what can I add to my arsenal? How can I become a better clinical dentist so I can offer more to my patients? One, I become a better diagnostician because because it's amazing how when you have the ability to do something, all of a sudden you start seeing it. When you don't have the ability to do it, sometimes it just doesn't seem quite as urgent. You don't do ortho at all. You know ortho. And it's amazing how when you all of a sudden you're like, oh, we do it for ortho. You look at someone and say, I never would have touched that in the past. But now it's like I can see the reasons why that should be treated legitimately. Why it should be treated. Just know more about it. To become a better server of your patients that way. Of course, it creates more patients saying yes to more things. The same number of people saying yes to more things, which means more revenue for your business. So the number one investment would be you. Just invest in you, your facility, your team, your equipment, whatever it takes. Just make smart, good investments of that. From a house standpoint, quite honestly, I would say, Helly, that never look at a house as an investment. It isn't. Just don't kid yourself. I did for years. Like, that is a great investment. Oh, really? Well, go sell it tomorrow. Like, well, no, can't do that. Well, you can sell your stocks tomorrow. You can sell the piece of real estate that you don't own tomorrow. Why can't you? Well, because I have to live someplace. Right. It's not an investment. And if it was an investment, you'd have to look and say, well, good, I buy, $100,000 worth of stock. So do I have to put a new roof on it next year? No. Do I have to put any money into it at all? No. It either grows or it goes down in value, but I don't have to keep putting money into it. But a house, I'm constantly pouring money into it. And so I'm not saying don't get a house, but I would say if you look and say, I just need to get a house, I have to have my own place. Awesome. I totally feel that way. Totally am that way. Then just get something that's very reasonable, very modest. It's that same thing. Don't start off with the big fancy thing that's just going to impress all your neighbors, you think, and you really can't afford that because you're stealing money from other things. So I would say first investment sure is yourself and your business. So yourself in education and skills, your business, your team, and the equipment, the whole facility, so you can offer more to your patients. Second thing would be, as from an investment standpoint, would be certainly start, again, you said it beautifully, get used to living poor. So as you start earning more money, all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't know what it costs. So I'll just pick a number. Before it cost, I, as a dental student, cost me $40,000 a year to live, $50,000, whatever it is. Well, when your income goes to 70, and you could have lived on 50, we have to pay tax on the 70, take that, but the rest of it you could just put into an IRA. Simple, easy, and make it automatic. Like every single week, money just leaves your business and goes into your IRA. I don't get a chance to write a check for it. It just goes there. Because you have to write a check. Sometimes you look and say, oh, but geez, I could go on that trip to wherever, and that's a couple grand. I think I'll do that, and then I'll do the IRA next month. Yeah, right. And that does not. So invest in yourself, invest in an automatic withdrawal into, and I say like an IRA, that kind of one, anything like that, anything that's pension oriented where you don't have to pay tax on it right now, or Roth is a great one. If your tax bracket's really low, which it probably is, good, put it in a Roth. Pay a little bit of tax down, you never pay tax on it ever again in the future. And then lastly, the house, as that pops up, do very modest. And then after that, like you mentioned, a car is like has to be the worst possible thing you could ever spend money on. It's just terrible. And of course we spend money on that. So my advice, if you have to buy it, a car, we buy one that's 2 or 3 years old, buy one that has 30 or 40,000 miles on it, that's been kept in very good shape. Most of the depreciation is gone initially when the first drives it, so you're not paying for that. So you're getting a much better value for a car. And then you can keep looking and say, well, maybe I can buy a used, really nice car for almost the same amount as I would buy a brand new, but not as nice car. So if you have to have that luxury, at least get it in a depreciated way in buying used. And certainly isn't right or wrong. I like nice things. My wife likes nice things, even more so than I do, for sure, in many different ways. And yet between the two of us, we've been married for 36 years and been alive for 64, 65. I've bought one new car in my life. So, practice what I preach, and all the cars are nice. Like if you looked at my car now, you say, oh, this is a nice car. Looks nice. It's clean. I said, yeah, but it's not brand new for sure.
Yeah, that's all great advice. And I think a good way for people to look at stepping stones as they're progressing from, I guess, different income levels and debt ratios, hopefully going down a little bit. So kind of following on the topic of advice for people just finishing up dental school. So if someone is just finishing up dental school looking to get their first associate position, what do you recommend they look for in an office to see if it's going to have room for clinical growth, anything with the team, like any red flags they should be looking for?
Yeah, well, I think that I guess I'll give you a perspective, probably more so from the owner of the kind of business standpoint, and then the person trying to do it, because I never did that. Right out of residency program, I bought a practice and just off I went. And it wasn't expensive, some big practice, there's very few patients and so forth. So it wasn't like I just was coming from a very blessed area of financial position. No silver spoon in my mouth. I worked my way wherever I went. But it would be that from my standpoint, it is so hard in our interviewing process. I mean, if you look at the interviewing process for a team member, associate dentist, which I had a couple near the end of my career, is the same. It was really pretty arduous. Like we would spend time with the person and do personality profiles, and they would shadow us, and we'd talk to this and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like, it was amazing how often it's like, wow, how did this person slip through? Like they just don't fit here at all. It's just so hard, I think, to know. So certainly anything you can do, like, shadow the place, talk to one. If for me, certainly as I'm hiring somebody, if I see somebody who's been in a lot of jobs for a short period of time, then in my mind, it's like, well, they're not sure what they're looking for. Because there couldn't be that many places that were that bad that they had to get out that quickly. And so it might be the same thing there. If you look and said, oh, this person's had 2 associates, 3 associates, 5, 8, 10. I went to a place once, the guy already had 14 associates. And they couldn't all be bad. He said, yeah, I want to find the right one. It's like, well, maybe it's not them, maybe it was more him. So I think that it can be hard to find that associate position if that's what you're looking for. As far as buying, a place, I think that's a great move. There's no question. Sooner the unknown, I think that people you can appreciate it because of relationships that you've had with other people. So if you look at it and said, so you're going to date somebody, you're brand new. So does that person that you're first dating, a month into the dating, do they truly trust you as much as they would if you've been together for 4 years? And I think everybody would say, no. They might say, I trust you after a month, but the level of that trust and the things that they would do for you is very different after 4 years than it is a month. So the same thing when you buy a practice, the patients are there and the ones that they meet you, and whether you're young or not, I can tell you it doesn't really matter because I bought a practice back in one state, 10 years later, moved to another state, 3 years later, moved into a practice. So I was 13, 14, 15 years after dental school. And so I wasn't this young looking kid coming out. And yet you can just tell those patients like, you're going to have to earn our trust. So the sooner you buy that practice, the sooner you're in that practice, then 2, 3, 4 years from now, when they start saying, now I trust you to do more, and you're building a skill set in 7, 8, 9, 10 years, now I really trust you a lot. You're just getting to that point sooner, as versus if you go rent your time out, my word, as an associate in some place where there's no potential for partnership, there's no potential for ownership, you're just trading hours for dollars. And that's not bad. It's just that I think that one piece that looked and said, so how come I started as an associate and I'm getting paid, doesn't matter, $200,000 a year. And my buddy goes out and he buys a practice and he's only making $100,000 a year. How come he's making way more money than I am at 6, 7, 8, 10 years than I am here as the associate? Because he invested in a thing called relationship trust. It did it right. And that's starting to create all kinds of dividends, rewards for him in business ownership that you're not going to get as an employee.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. And that was kind of something else I wanted to talk to you a little bit about too, what you see amongst people that you work with and just people you've interacted with. Do you personally think that ownership is the best way to get to someone's financial goals? Or do you think sticking it out if they're making a good income as an associate is still a good option?
Well, yeah, no way there's one size fits all. Like, because I would look and say, so from the owner of a dental business, like, do I need employees? You bet. Can't do it on my own. Like, they're incredibly valuable to my business. And then from each one of those employees, do they, still a question, but do they need an employer to earn money? It's like, yeah, if you're not going to go out and start your own business, you got to work for something. Like, you're either on one side of the coin or on the other. And so for somebody to say, like, do I become, an associate at some place to become an employee? I mean, associate's a nice word, but you're an employee of that group, or do I become the owner of the group? I think it all has to be fit into like, what's your course? I can appreciate where somebody, well, I don't want to take up too much time. I met when I was first out of school, I talked to dentists and they would say, like, so what are you doing this weekend? What are you tonight? Well, I got 2 young kids. I'm going to be, they're in the Bumblebee soccer thing. So I coached them. And then the weekends we're going to go here. And it was consistent that, so these are the guys that would be like 90, 100 years old now. They're dead, most of them. That they would be saying, like, it's really great what you're doing. You're spending so much time with your family. Like when I, 90-year-old, 100-year-old dentist now, when I was your age, 3, 4 nights a week, I'd be out with other dentist friends. Like, I didn't go home and see my kids. I didn't help them with homework. I wasn't at the dinner table. That, like, us professionals, we were expected after work, you can go out with your dental buddies, you can talk about dentistry, you can have a drink or a dinner together. We did that all the time. That was what what was expected. And then for me, it's like, well, that changed a little bit. I wanted to spend more time with my kids. And then now I look at this generation, and then you look and say, I don't want to work as hard as you did, Dave. I just don't want to do that. I just don't. And I would say, perfect. That's good. And if you can figure out a way to have what other people are having by going down a different course, good for you. Or you may look at it and say, like, I'm going to trade off there. Like, where are my goals? Where are my values? Where do I want my life to be? And if it's not around doing the things of business ownership that have nothing to do with dentistry, has to do with running the business, which takes some time and energy, mental energy and physical energy, then dentists are always going to need employee dentists to help them out. The downside of being the employee dentist is you don't control the ship at all. You really don't. And even if you are, I've had some just amazingly awesome employees, clinicians who well, even dentists, but in my whole career of, like hygienists and assistants who were just incredibly bright. They could do anything they want to, dentistry or anything they want to. They just chose that career path. But at any point in time, they kind of would know, like, if like I have no security, like if David gets in a car accident tomorrow or something happens to him, it's like, I'm gonna have to go find another job. Like it's just gone like that. And so, so some of the security parts of business ownership for sure aren't there as an employee. You are at the whims or like I employee know I could run this business better. Like we keep talking to the owner, like if we did this business wise, we could create more revenue, create more profit, create more goodness for our patients. And the owner might be like, yeah, just don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do it at all. So there's, it's a great question. You have, Elliot, it's an awesome question. I think it involves much more so, like, well, should I get married or not? Great question. One isn't right. Should I have kids or not? Great question. How many kids should I have? Great question. Different paths for different folks. But I think within that, though, you definitely look at and say, if you're really clear on, so what is you want out of life? Not necessarily for your whole life, but generally speaking, what do you want out of life? Then you can start helping with this. That's really important to you. These are the things that need to line up with that. And these are things that definitely don't line up with that.
Yeah, it's certainly not black and white. It's more of a discussion than this is the answer to this question.
It's a great discussion. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And one I'm sure that, you'd hope that every single pre-dental and dental and any point is, more and more asking themselves, like, what do I want out of this thing called life?
Yeah. And it's good to do that forward thinking as you're pre-dent and as you're in dental school. But then you can think so much and you can get out and work a day and say, all right, I'm done working for someone else. Like I know that I want to be an owner. Or you can be working for someone else and say, I see what this owner is going through. I never want to do that. So as much as you think ahead, you won't really know till you get out and start experiencing it, I feel like.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one particular, again, happens to be a female, but it easily could have been a male. I used to teach the residents the treatment planning at the hospital residency program for like the past 15 years in the town where my practice was. And so it was fun. It was fun to work with them. And there's like, remember one woman in particular, I don't know, I'll say 6 months after she graduated. And we didn't have any particular relationship any more than any other one from the standpoint of like training or mentoring and like that. But she was crying. She was like, oh man, what's going on? Like I couldn't, and she told me that she was, which many had, said, yeah, I'm going to be an associate at this dentist. And I didn't know the dentist that well, but I knew that they'd owned several practices and so forth. And they were likely to accept, no wrong here. I'll accept lots of insurance and maybe Medicaid and like that. And so she said, oh, I'm just like miserable. Like I want to do this for her. And so, okay, so like, why are you crying? Said, I got fired. Really? I said, yes, I got fired too. And I said, oh, so you're upset, right? I can tell. He said, yeah. And so, I said, I'll tell you something. He said, what? That's the best thing that could ever happen to you. It's like, huh? Like, that's the best thing that happened to you. Like you're destined for great things. You do wonderful stuff. And he just helped you get the heck out of there sooner than you could help yourself to get out of it. Like you're going to do great stuff. And then, we touched base actually just recently too, which is many years later, but even like, 6 or 9 months later, she said, thank you so much. I'm in a totally different place. This is so much better. You're absolutely right. And I never looked at it like that. It was actually a blessing, but it certainly was. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like sometimes you think this is exactly right, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, bad decision. So make a new decision. On you go, right? You took your best shot at it. Doesn't mean you're wrong. You took your best shot. So now you have new information. Now you can make a different decision. Good, do that.
Yeah, I love all the advice you've given today and experience you shared. I really appreciate it. I would love to know if anyone listening has like follow-up questions for you or anything. Is there a good way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. I'm always happy to talk with folks. Yeah, so probably numerous ways. I'm easy to find, but website is the name of my company, a coaching company, is Ultimate Success in Dentistry, and the website is ultimate success dot dentist. So no com, just ultimate success dot dentist. And then there's another one which is easier to remember, which is 4m40.com. Anyway, you write it or spell it, whatever, it'll come up. It shoots it to the same place. So that's easy. And on there, it's very easy ways to, like my cell phone number is available and all kinds of stuff is available. I'm very, very easy to reach. LinkedIn and all the other different Facebook places, social stuff. Easy to find there as well. But yeah, website's simple. There's a lot of stuff there. There's some freebies there as well. And more freebies over time as I create more books and stuff like that and courses. So yeah, it's happy to share with anybody for sure. Anything else I can do to help, always available.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate all the effort you're doing. It's really remarkable to see with all the stuff you got going on to tackle one more thing and put one more plate up in the air and keep them spinning. It's a testament to you
Thank
as an
you.
individual. Good for you. Well done.